Good afternoon, Dolphins fans. Welcome back to Dolphins on 5 from day 2 of Miami Dolphins training camp. David Eversole joined by Alfredo Arteaga and Ethan Skolnick from 5 Reasons Sports. Before we kick off this recap from today, want to mention one of our great sponsors here at the network, PrizePicks Daily Fantasy. You see us promoting them all the time, obviously. They have a great platform. A little bit of a slow time for sports during the summer, but there's still a lot to do out there, whether it's MLB, esports, WNBA kicking off, and more importantly, the NFL futures are available. So check out those NFL boards. Tua and Waddle looking good so far in camp. So a lot of storylines to follow as we lead into the season. But make sure you log in with promo code 5, FIVE, and deposit using that. So thank you guys for coming on. Excited to hear about day 2 of camp. So Alfredo, I'll start with you. What were your impressions from today?
My impressions for today were that the offense was pretty much on fire early on in the first half of practice. In my opinion, they were obliterating the defense. Now, of course, they didn't play some of their players. Xavier Howard didn't play many snaps today, and of course Byron Jones is out. But Javon Holland and Duke Riley got beat pretty badly by Tyreek Hill across their face on a slant route that went for good yardage. Jalen Waddle had a monster day again. And as you can tell by Twitter, everybody's really, really upset about a 48-yard gain on first down. So it had to have been a pretty good day for Tua in the first half. I will give credit to those that are, I wouldn't call it hating. I would just say being a little extra critical. Tua didn't finish off as great as he could have. He did have 2 bad passes toward the end of the day.
Ethan, what did you see today? I know we didn't catch it yesterday.
I wasn't there today. I was there yesterday. So it's just more general impression type stuff. But I think first thing, I don't think it's a huge surprise that the offense is ahead of the defense. We've seen that at times, one unit or the other. But honestly, there's just so much more talent on this offense than there's been. I was thinking about it today, and it's like, okay, what's the most talented Dolphin offense since Marino? I covered the 2002-2003 teams, where you had Ricky Williams in the backfield and you had, Chris Chambers and some of the other pieces that they had out there on the outside with Randy McMichael. They probably had a better, more proven offensive line than this team has had. But and they had, obviously, at that point, Jay Fiedler until it was Ray Lucas and then A.J. Feely in 2004. But 2002, 2003, there was significant talent. But really, since then, it's been a player here or a player there. I don't think they've had – this much where it's like, okay, you can see how the pieces will fit. And we talk about Jalen Waddle. I think I was doing a show today with somebody from out of town saying, I think he's going to have a huge season. You look at it, the attention that's going to be drawn to Tyreek Hill. I think that you're going to see Waddle's catches go down because yet last year it was just like Tua just needs to get rid of the ball for his life. And Waddle was the one guy who could get open quickly. But I think this year you're looking probably at his catches coming down by maybe a third, but I think his yards go up by a third. And certainly the yards per catch are going to go up significantly. So I think when you're looking at Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill, the backs that they've added, the fact that Gaskin and Ahmed were basically 1 and 2 and now they're 3 and 5, that gives you an indication of how much talent's on the offense. So I think actually some of the offensive stuff could sustain this year, whereas it hasn't in the past.
Yeah, and these guys matching up, obviously, with the great secondary, it's going to benefit everybody, like we talked about yesterday. So, Ethan, I wanted to ask you, you weren't on with us yesterday, but you were at camp. Alfredo and I talked about just the vibe of the team. So can you touch on that a little bit, just in terms of what you saw about the energy of the team and just the overall camaraderie, the flow of the practice, things like that? Anything you noticed different?
Well, you mentioned flow. We mentioned, was that intentional that you threw flow in there?
A little bit.
In there under the bus is my dog runs behind me getting snacks. What did you get, by the way? Anyway, look, having been around pretty much all of the coaches, that have been here since Jimmy. Okay, it's just different. There's no coach I can think of who would have taken a selfie with the media before. And look, there's a risk to this because Mike McDaniel hasn't faced any adversity to this point, and we'll get a sense of it when there's adversity. If they start 1-3, how does he handle that? Tony Sperano started 1-3 and then found the Wildcat, right? And then that propelled them to kind of a miracle season, but then couldn't sustain it after that. It's all good now, and I want it to work because I like this approach, okay? The Dolphins have been not just bad, but they've been boring for a long time. Just boring offensively, boring in terms of personalities. This guy's going to let them be themselves. I mean, he's telling Tua to stop being hard on himself, whereas Brian Flores was handicapping him intentionally every possible way he could. So I like the vibe. I mean, it just feels more normal. I mean, the coach actually telling you what's going on in practice. Like, when does that happen here? Like, this does not need to be like a grand secret all the time. Like, what has that gotten them? Like, nothing, right? So, I mean, the fact that it's loose is good, and I want him to succeed. But we'll see when the adversity hits and when decisions have to be made and how the players handle that. We don't know at this point, but it seems genuine. Somebody made a comparison to me. I was on with Jeff DeForest this morning on this channel, and the Cam Cameron thing was brought up, that there's some hokey stuff. There's no comparison here to Cam Cameron. Cam Cameron was pretending to be something for people. This is who this guy is. He's like the fun IT guy, and who's really smart. And as long as he, look, it's not all analytics. When you listen to him talk, he's talking basic football, right? But he's also talking about personalities, and he's talking about bringing out the most in people and going to fewer reps because he wants the reps to be more intense. That is human stuff. This is not like Sam Hinkie or Daryl Morey or Sashi Brown or any of that. This is he's trying to relate to his players as people. And the other thing is, it seems like he knows what he's talking about. So as long as he knows what he's talking about, the players are going to react. So I'm actually enthusiastic about this team for the first time in a long time. But again, we'll see how it plays out.
Yeah, Mike McDaniel, just to add on to that, Mike McDaniel, if he wasn't coaching, he'd probably have a podcast somewhere, And
if he wants one here, he could have it.
Yeah, 4.5 yards per carry or something like that, if he wants to call it that. But yeah, he's like it's not a derogatory term because we have 3 of them on our own podcast, but he's kind of a football nerd and he has the job. So he's having fun coaching right now. And yeah, I'm with you. We'll wait till there's some adversity because, like I've said before, and we've said on the podcast, there is no honeymoon here. Like he has pressure now. Like, is he allowed to win 10 games and then miss the playoffs? And then we just sit around and say, man, we're just unlucky, missing the playoffs with 10 wins, maybe. But other than that, he has to make the playoffs. Like we have to see improvement. There's a lot of money was spent. A lot of players were acquired. This is a really good roster. It was a decent team last year. They should be better. They should make the playoffs.
Do you think those expectations are unreal for a first-year head coach, though? Honestly, I mean, I know it's early.
I mean, we've seen a lot of first-year, but David, we've seen a lot of first-year head coaches have success, and I think he is set up for it to a certain degree. Like Alfredo said, I think the biggest thing working against him is he's in a really tough conference. And that's the thing. I mean, there are 4 teams in the West that look like possible playoff teams to me. There are probably two in the Central, right? There's probably 2 in the South. So, I mean, you're already looking at 8 teams there before you kind of get to your own division. Clearly, there's one other in your division in Buffalo. New England may be borderline. So, I mean, you're talking about 10 or 11 quality teams in the AFC. There's not that much quality in the NFC. So, he's in the tougher conference. But I don't think excuses can be made. I'm with Alfredo on this. This is he's been given a good roster. Brian Flores was not given a good roster the first year intentionally. Okay, this guy has been given a good roster, and so I think we need to see improvement. I think he's also set up for really a perfect opening. Getting New England here in the heat, first game of the year. Belichick's teams typically get better as the year goes on. He doesn't put everything in the preseason. I know the Heat. The Dolphins right now are 2.5. I'm trained for that. The Dolphins are a 2.5 point favorite, I think, right now, way out from that. Obviously, that'll change based on training camp and preseason games, but I would lay it. I feel pretty comfortable that Miami's going to get off to a big start this season, and so I think that sets up. But Alfredo's right. 10 wins, 10-7 may not get you in this year. You may need to win 11, honestly, and so that you don't want to be there where we're saying after the year, well, he did a good job, but he didn't make the play. This team needs to make the playoffs. I'm with Alfredo on that.
Yeah, definitely. So,
yeah, they're starting the season. They're starting the season off with two teams that they beat last year that they were a combined 3-0 against. Okay, it's not asking too much to just do it again. You did it last year with an inferior roster. Those teams actually got worse. I believe New England has gotten much worse than they were last year. That's not as good a roster as there was last year. When their entire media is talking about their major acquisition of the offseason is Devontae Parker. Okay, that team is not as good as it was last year. Then week 2, you play a Ravens team that you dominated down here. It's not asking too much to do it again. And then they have their litmus test again, once again. Week 3, when they play the Buffalo Bills, at some point you got to beat that team, right? And why not at home early when it's hot and when you're relatively healthy? So, yeah, there's pressure right off the gate, and they need to get off to a good start.
I agree with that. I think the expectations are very high. It's sort of a completely 180 narrative, obviously, from Flores and the tone of the team now to everything was negative to now. Tua is, for the most part, obviously, Alfredo and I talked about before the show, like, it's either everybody is 100% pro Tua or there's like the complete Tua, the haters. There's like no middle ground here. So I'm curious to see, obviously, as he progresses. But Alfredo, you were there today. Anybody stand out from you today on either side of the ball besides Waddle and Tua?
Besides Waddle, I would say Jalen Phillips. I can't tell you who he was going against because that would reveal who's on what team and what unit. But Jalen Phillips was flashing once again, and that's 2 days in a row where he flashes. Trill Williams looks like a player to me. He looks like a guy that should push Noah Benogany for that third spot. Although we were on the podcast last night and we were saying, maybe we're overthinking this. They really like Nick Needham because they paid him. So maybe Nick Needham is the third guy and he's not just the slot guy. So maybe Nick Needham is the one that backs up both boundary corners, Byron Jones and Xavier Howard. And then they'll find somebody to play the slot. Maybe Javon Holland plays the slot. Or maybe Eric Rowe plays the slot. So, behind those guys, you got to think that there's a battle between Noah Benogany and Trill Williams. I would say Trill Williams is getting a leg up so far. And I like what he's done in camp. And besides him, I really think it's Jalen Phillips. Jalen Phillips has really flashed all throughout the first 2 days. And he just looks different. Like, the body type, you could tell it's, maybe he had some of that body fat from, that baby fat from college. This is an NFL body now. Like, this is more muscle on top of muscle. It's different. He looks different.
Yeah, definitely look forward to a big second year from him. So, Ethan, any other thoughts from yesterday or anything you've seen from today?
I think to me the biggest thing is just, again, looking out on the field and seeing the depth that they have at different positions. I think you talk about a Trill Williams, again, at a very deep position for them. I think you look at the running back spot now where maybe they don't have an elite guy, but they certainly have a lot of guys that they can go to. The tight end spot should be pretty comfortable this season. They're real. Again, we keep coming back to the offensive line, and then I look over at Armstead and like, okay, maybe things are going to be all right. It does feel like they have the depth to sustain potential injuries at a couple of spots also. That's why I like the Sanu signing, even though I don't know how much he's going to contribute, but he gives them another proven guy there. It just doesn't feel like they're just going to be reaching for guys this year. It feels like there will be answers that they can come up with. So I've covered so many camps and much more diligently than I'll cover this one. And I've learned not to read into a lot of things. There are a lot of camp guys who flash, the Robert Bakers and the Jared Tolvers of the world. You never hear from them again. To me, it's just looking at the team and saying, okay, do you have quality players at this position, right? Do you have guys with upside at this position? And it just feels like they got more of that than they've had in past years. So we'll see how it plays out. There's really no excuses for Tua now. I consider myself to be a middle ground person on Tua, a middle ground to upside. But even I will say that this is a prove-it year for him. They have given him the tools. So we will find out this year if he can get through a season and if he can perform at a top 12 level in the NFL. If he can, he's their guy. If he can't, he's not. That's kind of where I'm at right this year.
Yeah, let me add on to that as far as Tua, because I haven't said it on this show. I believe that this is a prove-it year for Tua, and if he doesn't come through this year, I don't think that they're going into the draft pool to try to get a young guy to replace him with. I think they'll just use those picks to get a veteran, a proven quarterback to just plug in, because if you look at this roster, this is not a roster you hand to a rookie quarterback. This is a roster you hand to, not to start anything, but maybe a Tom Brady or a Lamar Jackson.
Right. Or Russell Wilson if he was still available.
Yes, you hand this type of roster to a proven veteran. So yeah, it's his prove-it year. Absolutely.
Yeah. So before we wrap, obviously, day 2 of camp, we saw Jalen Waddle's out there with the orange jersey. I know this is a big thing that everybody's following. Who gets the orange jersey for the following day? So I want to get that to you, Alfredo.
Don't follow it too closely, though, because they'll get upset. Make sure you don't tweet it before they do.
Yeah, make
Inside
sure tomorrow. Make sure that they tune in onto your Twitter account, to Miami Dolphins Twitter account, and
Not
wait
to
for them
us, not to
not
3
to
O's
us.
to carry, not to 5 Reasons
No,
Sports.
go to their Twitter account and wait for them
Theirs.
to announce who is the recipient of the orange jersey. All right. Yesterday I fell flat on my face, but who cares? It's my award, right? It's the 3YPC Practice Player of the Day award. I gave it to Trill Williams yesterday. I thought it was well deserved. They gave it to Jalen Waddle. Today, I'm giving it to Jalen Waddle. So that's 2 for 2.
He's not getting 2 straight days.
I'm going to give it to Jalen Waddle.
Okay.
I thought he was the Practice Player of the Day. I thought through 1 hour, I was prepared to give it to Tua. I didn't think he finished strong. He had 2 bad passes toward the end of the game, toward the end of the practice that almost got intercepted. I thought Tyreek Hill played really, really good, but he had a drop toward the end of practice that could have been for a big gainer. I'll knock him down a peg for that. Jalen Waddle was just, he was perfect today. He was really, really good, made big plays all day. He was the Practice Player of the Day for me today.
All right, so we shall see tomorrow. I want to thank everybody for watching, obviously, and Ethan and Alfredo for joining us. And we'll be back for another report from tomorrow's camp Friday afternoon. Thanks, everybody.